Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories.
In Harmony Gardens, everything had its place. Lawns were regulation height, paint colors came in 5 HOA-approved shades, and violations were handed out like Halloween candy. And then there was my place, 42 Maple Street, the neighborhood eyesore, or, as I preferred to call it, home. I need to point out that when I bought the place, the real estate agent assured me it wasn't part of any HOA. My lawyer confirmed it too. We went over the title carefully, no restrictions, no mention of an association, nothing. It was supposed to be just a regular home on a regular street, free from all that bureaucratic garbage. I didn't start off trying to be a menace, honestly, but if you give a man a dozen passive-aggressive letters about the length of his hedge, you're eventually going to get some pushback. Especially if that man is me. It all started when I painted the house. Not taupe, not gray, not any of the HOA's pre-approved shades with names like Birch Mist and Summer Pebble. I went with a vivid blue, something that said, "This is my house, and no one's going to tell me otherwise." The next day, I had a letter in my mailbox. Violation. Unapproved paint color. 2 days after that, Larry Winston himself showed up. Larry, the self-important head of the HOA, walked up my path in a tucked-in polo, clipboard in hand, the kind of guy who probably timed how long people left their trash cans on the curb. "You know, you're not allowed to use that color," he said, pointing at my house like it had personally offended him. "I didn't see your name on the deed," I replied, sipping my coffee. "Also, hi, we've never met. I'm Jack. You'll be getting a fine. Add it to the collection." The collection started fast. First the paint, then my trash can was visible from the street. Next, my porch light was too bright. Then, apparently, my lawn gnome projected vulgarity. It was just flipping the bird. Harmless stuff. At first, I thought it was funny. I'd tack each letter to the fridge. Started calling it my wall of shame. But then I realized they weren't going to stop. Every week, another complaint, another threat, another notice of violation. They even started getting creative. One morning, I got dinged for excessively whimsical lawn decor. That's how they described my ceramic turtle wearing sunglasses. Another time, a notice cited reflective window coverings in violation of neighborhood harmony aesthetics. That was a Mylar emergency blanket I'd pinned up temporarily because my AC was on the fritz. So I did some digging. Turns out, when this subdivision was built, a few lots, including mine, were excluded from the HOA's jurisdiction due to a filing error. Somehow, that little piece of info never made it into Larry's personal playbook. I made a copy of the property records and kept them in a folder. The next letter came with a hefty fine, $500 for multiple ongoing violations. I wrote back. I didn't threaten. I didn't complain. I simply attached a copy of the jurisdiction records and asked them to kindly shove their fine where the HOA sun doesn't shine. Larry didn't like that. He knocked on my door the next day, red-faced and furious. "We're taking you to court," he said. I grinned. "Can I wear this shirt?" It said, my HOA, with the heart made of flames. "Laugh it up," he snapped. "We'll see who's laughing when the judge slaps you with penalties." Court day came. I showed up in jeans and a button-up. Larry came in like he was leading a military tribunal. He had 2 other board members with him, both wearing matching navy blazers like they were trying out for a synchronized HOA enforcement team. They carried folders, binders, and what looked like poster boards. I assumed they were planning to create a visual timeline of my offenses. The courtroom itself was mostly empty. A bored bailiff sat by the door, and a few people from the neighborhood had shown up for entertainment. I spotted Mrs. Tanner from down the street. She winked at me. The judge walked in, a tired-looking woman in her 60s who seemed like she'd rather be anywhere else. She let Larry make his full presentation. "Your Honor, the defendant has failed to adhere to community standards. He's mocked the association, damaged the aesthetic value of our neighborhood, and created an ongoing nuisance that threatens the very integrity of Harmony Gardens." He slapped a photo down of my blue house. "Here's the unauthorized color, Pacific Splash." More photos followed. My lawn gnome, the trash can, the Mylar blanket, a shot of me in my front yard wearing a kilt. That last one confused even me. The judge finally turned to me. "Mr. McAllister, is it true your property is not legally part of this HOA?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And do you have documentation?" "Yes, Your Honor." I slid over the paperwork. She read through it, eyebrows rising halfway through the first page. After 5 minutes of silence, she closed the file and looked at Larry. "This case is dismissed. You have no legal jurisdiction over this property. Mr. McAllister is not required to comply with any HOA directives." Larry's jaw twitched. One of his little blazer buddies whispered something in his ear. The judge added, "And I strongly advise you not to waste this court's time in the future with baseless claims." Larry didn't even argue. He just stood there, frozen, lips moving but nothing coming out. Outside the courtroom, he cornered me by the soda machine. "You think this is over?" he hissed. "No," I said. "I think it's about to get fun." And it did. The next morning, I bought 4 flamingo statues. Bright pink. I placed them in strategic spots around my yard like they were planning a heist. Then I mowed the lawn diagonally to spell out, "Not yours," in bold green lines. I made sure to wave at the HOA patrol car as it rolled by, the same beige Toyota Corolla that creeped through the neighborhood every other day. Later that afternoon, I got a knock at the door. It was Larry again. He looked like he hadn't slept. His tie was crooked. "Those flamingos are disturbing the visual cohesion of the block," he said flatly. I smiled. "They're planning a barbecue? You're not invited. You're creating a hostile environment." "Hostile? Larry, you fine people for planting the wrong kind of tulips." He opened his mouth, closed it, and stormed off. That weekend, I hosted a little get-together. Nothing crazy. A few neighbors, a portable grill, some music. I called it the Freedom from Petty Authority Cookout. We made burgers. One guy brought ribs. Someone brought fireworks, which I told them we couldn't light. But somehow a few still went off. The HOA called the police. 2 officers showed up just as we were serving s'mores. They looked around, saw a dozen people laughing and eating, and asked what the problem was. "Noise complaint," one officer said, "and possibly a fire hazard." I pointed at the fire pit. "That's city approved and within regulation distance from any structures." He nodded. "Looks fine to me." The other officer noticed Larry lingering on the sidewalk. "Is he the one who called?" I shrugged. "Probably." They chatted with him for a minute. He looked frustrated, gesturing wildly at the grill and the flamingos. They left shortly after, offering us a smile and saying, "Enjoy your evening." The next morning, I woke up to another letter taped to my door. It wasn't even in an envelope, just typed out in bold caps, "You are ruining this neighborhood." I framed it. In the days that followed, Larry Winston's frustration turned radioactive. I figured he'd lick his wounds and move on after court tossed out his case like expired yogurt. But nope. He doubled down, tripled, even. Tuesday morning, I found him pacing on the sidewalk in front of my house, muttering into his phone. I opened the window just enough to hear. He painted a goddamn mural. "Susan." "A mural. It's got a dinosaur holding a sparkler." "Yeah, I have. A friend of mine's a tattoo artist with free time and too many spray cans." One stegosaurus later, my garage door was now a prehistoric fireworks celebration. I stepped outside in my robe, coffee in hand. "Morning, Larry. Need a tour?" He turned sharply, eyes wide with disbelief. "This is vandalism." "Art," I corrected. "Private property art. You should see the back fence. My buddy painted a portrait of my dog wearing sunglasses." He opened his mouth like he was about to burst into interpretive dance, then spun around and stomped off toward his beige Corolla, nearly slipping on a flamingo in his path. Next day, he brought reinforcements. The whole HOA board marched down the street like they were in some kind of golf cart militia. There was Maureen from Lot 18, Bob from the cul-de-sac, and that weird guy Brad who always wore socks with sandals. They marched up to my porch like they were staging a coup. Bob started, "We've come to request that you bring your property into compliance with the spirit of the neighborhood." I squinted at him. "Did you rehearse that?" Maureen, clutching a binder like it was the HOA Bible, piped up, "You are causing emotional distress to the community." I blinked. "From dinosaur murals?" Brad tried to chime in but tripped on a lawn gnome and let out an undignified squeak. The gnome survived. Brad's ego didn't. Larry finally took the reins. "Jack, we're serious. This is harassment. You're violating the atmosphere of Harmony Gardens." I stepped out, barefoot, into my pink artificial grass. "Here's the thing, Larry. You don't have jurisdiction. You don't have control. And frankly, I think this neighborhood could use a little less harmony and a little more humor." Bob looked like he was about to cry. Maureen gasped when she noticed my new addition, a small sign that read, "Warning, HOA board members will be photographed and posted online." They left in a huff. Predictably, that evening, I posted a lovely collage to Facebook. Larry glaring at my yard. Maureen holding her binder like a riot shield. Brad mid-trip. Caption. The HOA posse, now accepting applications for interpretive drama club. It went viral. Not internet viral, but neighborhood viral. Neighbors I'd never spoken to started waving. A few even dropped off beers or baked goods, cheering me on. One elderly guy named Ralph gave me a high five and said, "About damn time someone poked the bear." But the bear wasn't amused. 3 days later, Larry reported me for violating local noise ordinances. Again, this time, because I was playing the kazoo on my porch at 7:01 a.m. He was technically correct. It was within legal hours, but he still called the cops. The officer who arrived recognized me from the barbecue. "You again." "Morning," I said, still kazooing. "Want some coffee?" He chuckled. "You're not breaking any laws." Larry thinks my kazoo is emotionally damaging. He shook his head. "Call me if they actually try anything illegal." By now, the Facebook group was alive with comments. People were picking sides. There were memes. Someone made a gif of Brad tripping over the gnome. That's when Larry really lost it. He came back the next afternoon, flanked by Maureen and some lawyer-looking guy in a shiny suit. They handed me a cease and desist letter. "This," Larry said, shaking the papers at me, "is defamation." I read it. "I'm allowed to photograph people on public property." "You're humiliating us," Maureen snapped. "Well, stop giving me material." The lawyer guy tried to look serious. "If you continue, we'll seek an injunction." I smiled. "You're going to ask a judge to make me stop posting pictures of people standing on a sidewalk?" He didn't answer. The next day, I installed a dozen new cameras. Motion triggered, 4K, some with night vision. A few fake ones with blinking red lights for flare. Larry's face was on the neighborhood page by noon. Maureen too. They were inspecting my mailbox. Someone commented, "They must be hunting war crimes." Another, "Is Maureen wearing a cape?" That night, my doorbell rang. Again, it was Officer Thompson, my new best friend. They called again. He said, clearly trying not to laugh. "Which crime this time?" "Unauthorized surveillance." I reminded them it's your property. I offered him a s'more. "Thanks," he said. "By the way, several neighbors called to say they're enjoying your photos." Larry tried a new tactic. He sent a formal HOA letter to my mortgage company, claiming I was in violation of community standards. Didn't work. My lender called me confused. I explained. They laughed. Then came the sidewalk confrontation. I was watering my flamingo turf when Larry stormed up with a folded manila envelope. "We're filing a harassment suit," he said. "You've crossed the line." I didn't take the envelope. "You've been harassing me, my board, and the integrity of this neighborhood. You've been lurking around my property and trying to ruin my life with fake fines." He shoved the envelope at me. "You'll be served soon." "Perfect. You just helped my case." And then I filed my own paperwork. Restraining order. I gathered everything, video clips, photos, letters, timestamps. Every time they loitered on my sidewalk, every time they took photos, every police visit, Officer Thompson wrote a statement. In court, I laid it all out. Larry showed up with his lawyer and binder brigade. The judge took one look at my evidence and granted the order. Mr. Winston and any representatives of the HOA board are to remain no less than 100 feet from Mr. McAllister's property unless in the case of emergency. Larry looked like he'd swallowed a stapler. Outside the courtroom, Maureen asked quietly, "Are we the baddies?" No one answered her. Back home, I added a new sign to my lawn. HOA free zone. Harassment free since date of order. The flamingos got tiny capes. One held a sign, "Freedom wins." In the weeks after the restraining order, the neighborhood settled into a strange kind of Cold War. The HOA board was neutered, banned from setting foot near my home. But that didn't mean they'd vanished. Oh no, they got sneakier. Larry and his crew started sending emails. Not to me, those would have violated the order. No, they emailed my neighbors. Long rants about community standards, vague warnings about property values plummeting, and thinly veiled attempts to turn people against me. Did it work? Not really. I was something of a local legend now. People walked their dogs past my house just to see what I'd added next. One week it was a garden gnome orchestra. The next, a life-size cardboard cutout of Nicolas Cage on the roof, peeking down like some deranged Santa. And the pink grass? It started a trend. 3 houses down, Carol and Steve replaced their lawn with lime green turf and installed a bubble machine. A few others added colored mulch, sculptures, even lawn furniture shaped like jungle animals. Larry's nightmare was coming to life. That's when the HOA pulled out their secret weapon. Roger. Roger was the newest board member, freshly moved in from some gated monstrosity upstate. He wore pressed khakis and cologne strong enough to strip paint. I met him the day he stood across the street with a clipboard, watching my house like it was a crime scene. I waved. "Enjoying the show?" He didn't respond, just scribbled something down and walked away. 2 days later, I got a letter. Not from the HOA. They couldn't legally send me anything directly anymore. This was from the City Code Enforcement Office. Apparently, an anonymous complaint had been filed about the color of my grass, and the mural, and the lawn ornaments, and the chickens. Yes, I'd gotten chickens. 5 of them, named after the HOA board members, just to keep things spicy. I showed up at the city office with a binder of my own. Not HOA grade, but decent. Permits, photos, city ordinances printed and highlighted. Everything was within code. The clerk, a woman named Janine, gave me a thumbs up. Honestly, I wish more people were this prepared. I asked her who filed the complaint. She smirked. Let's just say his cologne got here 5 minutes before he did. Roger. So I added another sign to the yard. Yes, it's legal. No, you can't touch it. Ask Roger. It got shared online over 300 times. A few days later, someone from the local paper called me. They wanted to do a piece on HOA overreach and community pushback. I agreed, with one condition. They had to take a photo of me and the chickens in front of the mural. The article ran with the headline, "The Man Who Flamingoed Back." Larry exploded. Not literally, though Maureen probably wished he had, based on the way she was screaming during the next HOA meeting. A neighbor recorded it. I watched the video on loop like it was a Netflix special. Maureen, this is a disaster. Brad, what if we just repaint his house ourselves? Larry, we can't. The restraining order, Bob. I miss when this place was beige. That one really got me. So I painted my mailbox in rainbow stripes, added googly eyes to the trash cans, hired a teenager to play the tuba in my yard during daylight hours. Roger tried to report me again. Didn't stick. Kid had a permit. That's when the HOA started fighting among themselves. They couldn't take action against me, and every time they tried to do something indirect, it blew up in their faces. And now, half the neighborhood was on my side. At the next HOA meeting, one I didn't attend but absolutely watched online thanks to a neighbor's stream, the cracks were visible. Larry opened with a monologue about restoring order. Brad interrupted to ask if maybe the bylaws were outdated. Maureen ranted about flamingos. Roger accused Carol of deliberately mocking the HOA by putting a disco ball on her porch. Carol responded by suggesting Roger move back upstate. It ended with Brad quitting on the spot and Roger threatening to contact the governor. The following day, a flyer appeared on every mailbox. Not from the HOA. No, this was anonymous. Big bold letters. New HOA leadership. Time for a vote. Underneath were pictures of Larry looking confused, Maureen yelling, and Roger pointing at nothing. It was magnificent. They tried to find out who printed the flyers. Blame me, of course. But I wasn't involved. This time, the revolution was self-sustaining. One evening, as I was grilling in the front yard, because of course I was, Larry approached, alone, for once. He stood awkwardly at the edge of my lawn, avoiding the flamingo statues. I came to talk, he said. I flipped a burger. You have to stay 100 feet away. Larry. I'm on the sidewalk. True. Speak your truth. He looked around, then lowered his voice. They're turning on me. You don't say. I just wanted this neighborhood to be peaceful. Well, I said, pointing to the rainbow mailbox, peace looks different to different people. He stood there for a long moment. I'm resigning. Voluntarily? No. They're voting me out. Wow. That's rough. He turned to leave, then stopped. You're really not going to take the mural down? I grinned. I'm thinking of expanding it. Maybe a pterodactyl over the garage. He just nodded and walked away. The next week, Harmony Gardens held a special election. New board. New energy. No more Larry. No more binder bashing Maureen. Roger packed up and sold his house. Moved back upstate. I didn't join the new HOA board. Never wanted to. But I did throw a neighborhood luau with a dinosaur theme. Everyone came. Even Brad. The chickens wore tiny lays. In the aftermath of the election, something changed in Harmony Gardens. But it wasn't peace. It was chaos, the fun kind. The new HOA board wasn't exactly functional. Most of them had been elected out of spite, protest votes from neighbors who were tired of clipboard tyranny. Their meetings became potlucks. Their rules, mostly just suggestions now. I didn't attend the first few. I preferred to watch from the comfort of my porch, beer in hand, chickens milling around my feet. The flamingos had been joined by inflatable dinosaurs, glow-in-the-dark garden snakes, and a weatherproof cutout of Jeff Goldblum in full Jurassic Park pose. It was glorious, but peace doesn't last, not in Harmony Gardens. Maureen tried to stage a comeback. She started a petition to recall the new board, claiming they were failing to maintain the neighborhood's core values. Her definition of core values seemed to be limited to beige paint, silence, and perfectly trimmed hedges. She showed up at my door with a clipboard and a scowl. "You don't even live here anymore," I said, already annoyed. "I still own property on this street," she snapped. "That gives me rights." I looked down at the chickens pecking at her shoes. They don't seem to agree. "You think this is funny?" "I think it's hilarious." She stormed off after threatening legal action. Again, I added a sign to the yard. "Warning, approaching this property may result in humiliation." The sign got featured on the neighborhood meme page. Someone started selling t-shirts with it. The new HOA board, to their credit, embraced the chaos. They hosted a neighborhood art contest. Entries included a topiary shaped like a duck, a garage door painted like a shark's mouth, and my favorite, a mailbox that looked like a frog with a cigar. Mine didn't win, mostly because I forgot to enter, but the pterodactyl mural made the front page of the local arts magazine. Then came the revenge of the bylaws. Some dusty clause in the HOA rules, one even Larry hadn't weaponized, got dredged up by a bitter ex-board member. It had to do with roof color. Apparently, all roofs had to be earth tone. Mine wasn't. I'd had it redone in shimmering blue. The new board didn't want to enforce it. They asked me nicely. I offered them lemonade. That was the end of it. Maureen, though, wasn't done. She called the city. Again, they sent someone out. Again. This time, it was a younger inspector who looked exhausted before he even stepped out of the car. "Is this the famous property?" he asked. "I try," I said. He glanced around. "It's all legal. Tell Maureen that." "Oh, I already did." "Twice," she called back. I blocked her number. We shook hands. He left. I added another sign, certified legal by 3 different city inspectors. One day, I got a knock at the door. It was Brad. "I know we've had our issues," he said. I gestured to a lawn chair. "Sit, talk." I just wanted to say, "Thank you." I blinked. "Come again?" "You broke the spell." "The fear. The rules we enforced because we were told to, not because they made sense." I didn't have a response for that. He stayed for a burger and left with a smile. But the real finale came during what was supposed to be a casual HOA-sponsored community barbecue. Neutral ground, good food, chill vibes, except Maureen showed up with a lawyer. Not her own lawyer, just a lawyer. Nobody knew who he actually represented. He started handing out papers. Some convoluted plan to sue the new board for failure to uphold the CC&Rs. People booed. Carol sprayed him with a bubble wand. Steve turned up the music. Someone handed me a bullhorn. I tapped it twice, and the crowd quieted. "Maureen," I said, "you've been warned. This event is for fun. Not lawsuits, not lectures. If you want a courtroom, there's one downtown." She glared. Roger. Yes, he had come back to visit. Tried to say something snide. I pointed at him. "Didn't you move?" "I'm just here as a guest." He snapped. "Well then, enjoy the chicken wings and shut up." The crowd cheered. The lawyer tried to salvage the moment, but nobody was interested. The new board formally announced a community vote to disband the HOA altogether. It passed, overwhelmingly. The next week, a group of us met to take down the old HOA signage and storage. We packed the old banners, leftover violation forms, and laminated parking notices into a box labeled Neighborhood Relics. We burned the whole thing at the next block party. As the fire crackled and the flamingo lights blinked on, I raised my drink and toasted the crowd to bad ideas, bad rules, and the end of beige tyranny. People laughed. Someone shouted, "Long live the pterodactyl!" And that was it. No Nepo, no moral redemption arcs, just a neighborhood set free. And me? I ordered a neon pink mailbox next, because Harmony Gardens never looked better than when it stopped trying to be perfect. I lived under an HOA that operated just like Harmony Gardens, run by control freaks who thought they were royalty because someone gave them a clipboard and a rule book. You want to repaint your door? Better be HOA-approved beige number 7. Lawn is inch too tall? You're damaging community aesthetics. So reading this saga was like therapy. Jack is the chaotic good neighbor we all wish we had the guts to be. Pink grass, chickens, Security cameras pointed at the HOA board? That's the exact level of lawful rebellion needed to dismantle these fake governments. The moment that really got me was when Maureen came back with a damn lawyer to a block party. Lady, it's brisket and potato salad, not a deposition. And then Carol sprays the guy with a bubble wand? Absolute perfection. That's what these people deserve. Public embarrassment and zero relevance. Also, Jack getting certified by 3 separate inspectors is so satisfying. There's something delicious about bureaucratic pests getting smacked down by their own systems. The best part, it doesn't end with a tidy resolution. No forgiveness arc, just fire, glitter, and a neighborhood liberated by disco mailboxes and inflatable dinosaurs. To Jack, wherever you are, thank you. You've given the rest of us a blueprint for how to burn an HOA to the ground without lighting a single illegal fire. The part that hit me hardest? When Jack said, "You think this is funny?" and replied, "I think it's hilarious." That was the turning point. That one line summarized the entire power shift. Before, the HOA had all the control. After that, they were clowns yelling into a void. It's wild how often these HOA types don't understand boundaries. Maureen literally tried to start a recall vote because the neighborhood was too fun. Imagine being that allergic to joy. She had no allies left, just resentment and a clipboard. You can't run a neighborhood on resentment. And the ending was perfect. Not because it was tidy. It wasn't, but because it wasn't. The HOA didn't get redeemed. Nobody apologized. They didn't go out with dignity. They got dragged into the street and mocked until the whole thing collapsed under its own fake authority. Burning the HOA materials like a witch trial finale? Absolutely iconic. I've never wanted to move somewhere more. This story deserves to be in a museum. The sheer psychological warfare Jack deployed is legendary. Every move calculated. Every interaction dripping with sarcasm and perfectly timed pettiness. The mailbox signs? The fake awards? Posting surveillance photos of the HOA board sneaking around his bushes? That's art, but what really made me lose it was the new HOA turning into a potluck squad. That's what neighborhoods should be, not beige rule zones enforced by people who peaked in middle management. Harmony Gardens was suffering from clipboard rot, and Jack fumigated the place with glitter, chickens, and petty vengeance. And the best part? No one learned anything. Maureen stayed awful. The HOA stayed petty. Jack stayed undefeated. Now excuse me while I go paint my fence neon and look up inflatable pterodactyls on Amazon.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.